The fiscal reform in Japan needs to deliver a very large adjustment over the next decade of about 10% of GDP, and it needs to do that in a way that's supportive of growth and also seen as fair by the Japanese population. We have some ideas how that might be done. We think there's a lot of room for increases in the consumption tax, even beyond what's being currently contemplated. The consumption tax rate in Japan is well below OECD averages. We think a lot needs to be done to reform the pension system, which has become perhaps the major source of fiscal deficits in the country. For example, we think that retirement ages could be increased in line with increased life expectancy. And we think there are a number of tax measures that can actually increase the potential for growth in the Japanese economy. For example, cuts in payroll and corporate taxes and elimination of deductions that have disincentivized women from entering the labor force all could raise growth in Japan. Any tax can depress somewhat economic activity, but we think a consumption tax is probably more supportive of growth than many other taxes. Also, it needs to be remembered that the fiscal adjustment and the consumption tax increase will only take place gradually over a decade. Early on in the process, it's actually possible that consumption could rise as people begin to move purchases forward, for example, of consumer durables and housing. So we may not see the kind of effect that we expect. And over the longer term, increased confidence in the Japanese fiscal situation can actually support consumption and investment. Well, as the initial phase of the crisis in 2008 and 2009 pointed out, Japan will be affected if there's further turmoil in Europe. This could go through the trade channel as demand in Europe declines. This could be exacerbated by safe haven flows into Japan that appreciates the currency and lowers equity prices. And while the financial system is fairly well insulated from direct contact with the European periphery, it could still be very much affected indirectly in a global slowdown. Japan has the most rapidly aging population in the world, and that will have profound implications on the economy for years to come. The aging population and the declining birth rate are leading to a smaller labor force, and that tends to depress growth even when productivity is rising. That's why we think it's important for Japan to do more to get women into the labor force and get older workers into the labor force. Also, older individuals tend to save less, and that's going to make it increasingly difficult for the government to finance its fiscal deficit. So that's another reason why we need to get the fiscal problem under control now.